There's a paradox about our age that I can't stop thinking about. We have never been more connected and never felt more alone. We can send our voices around the globe in less than a second, but we struggle to be heard across the dinner table. We build machines that can land on Mars, but we can't always find peace on Earth. Our technology has grown cosmic, yet our empathy sometimes remains tribal. We live surrounded by signals. They pour through every room, every second Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell towers, satellites, an invisible web of information, so dense it hums through the air like static. And yet, amid this symphony of communication, many of us feel unheard, as if we're shouting across the universe and no one's listening. Now imagine this. One night, buried in the data stream from a deep space radio telescope, scientists detect something unusual. A pulse, regular and precise, repeating from somewhere near the edge of the observable universe. Not random noise, not interference, a pattern. And for a moment, the entire scientific community holds its breath. We've seen odd signals before, of course. We've mistaken pulsars for alien transmissions, blamed gravitational lensing for cosmic whispers, even caught the echo of our own cell phones bouncing off the dish. But this one seems different. A whisper from the farthest reaches of space-time. A signal older than our species, maybe older than our planet. What could it mean? Somewhere between wonder and skepticism, we ask the same questions we've always asked. Are we alone? Is someone or something trying to reach us? Or is this simply nature's way of reminding us that not all mysteries are about us? Because if there's one thing the universe has taught us, it's humility. When we look at the sky, we're not gazing at a ceiling, we're looking backward in time. Every point of light is a story billions of years old. The glow from the Andromeda Galaxy left its stars when early mammals were still dreaming under Cretaceous skies. The cosmic microwave background, that faint hiss of ancient radiation, is the universe's baby picture, taken just 380,000 years after its birth. To listen to space is to eavesdrop on eternity. So what is this strange signal? Let's hold that question, because to understand what it might be, we have to understand how we've learned to listen. For most of human history, we didn't listen to the universe, we projected onto it. We filled the heavens with gods, myths, and omens. Thunder was anger. Comets were warnings. The night sky was less a map of reality than a mirror of human fear and hope. Then, one day, we pointed glass toward the heavens Galileo's telescope, a small tube of ground lenses that shattered our cosmic ego. We learned that the heavens were not perfect and immutable. They were dynamic, changing, alive with motion. And from that moment, humanity began a long apprenticeship to truth. Fast forward a few centuries, radio telescopes rise from deserts and mountain peaks, vast ears of aluminum tuned to the frequencies of creation. When Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson first detected that faint background static in 1965, they thought it was pigeon droppings in their antenna. It turned out to be the echo of the Big Bang, the universe itself still humming from its own birth. Imagine that. A sound older than time as we know it, reaching us through static. A reminder that the universe has been broadcasting since before we existed to listen. And yet, despite all our instruments, the sky remains mostly silent. The famous WOW signal detected in 1977, a single burst from deep space that lasted just 72 seconds, has never repeated. No follow-up, no source identified. Just one brilliant flare of possibility in the dark. It's as if the cosmos whispered, "You are not alone," and then fell silent for half a century. But perhaps that silence is part of the lesson. Maybe the universe is waiting to see whether we're ready to hear what it's really saying. Because the truth is, the universe is speaking all the time, just not always in words we understand. It speaks through the laws of physics, through the birth of stars, through the chemistry that builds our bodies from ancient stardust. Every atom in your hand was once inside a star that lived, burned, and died long before Earth existed. So when you raise your hand to the sunlight, you're not just catching photons, you're catching ancestry. That's what science has done. It's turned mythology into lineage. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are its latest expression. But if that's true, if we are the universe made conscious, then maybe the strange signal we've detected isn't alien at all. Maybe it's a reflection of ourselves, a test of how we interpret uncertainty. When we receive something we don't understand, do we reach for wonder or fear? Do we investigate or speculate? Do we look outward or inward? You see, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence has always been, at its core, a search for ourselves. Every time we ask, is anyone out there? We're also asking, who are we here? Because before we can recognize another intelligence, we have to prove that we're using ours. That's not a trivial challenge. We've built civilizations capable of decoding the genomes of life, but we still struggle to decode our own behavior. We split the atom before we learned to share a planet. We reached the moon before we reached mutual understanding. So maybe the silence of the stars isn't an absence of company. Maybe it's a reflection of our unreadiness to join the conversation. Carl Sagan once said, if we are alone in the universe, it sure seems like an awful waste of space. But perhaps the space isn't wasted, it's waiting. It's giving us time to grow up. Every civilization that's ever existed has faced a version of this test. The test of self-destruction. Can intelligence survive its own inventions? Can we handle the power we wield, technological, nuclear, digital, without burning the very foundation that made intelligence possible? If the universe is filled with civilizations that failed that test, then the silence out there is not loneliness. It's a memorial. And yet, we are still here. Still listening. Still sending our signals, radio waves, laser pulses, spacecraft etched with golden records. Each one carrying the same message. We were here, and we cared enough to reach out. That impulse to communicate across the abyss may be our species' greatest achievement, because it means we haven't given up on connection, even when there's no guarantee of reply. Perhaps the strange signal from the edge of the universe isn't a mystery to be solved, but a mirror held up to us. It asks, what kind of species listens beyond its horizon? What kind of mind builds instruments to hear the faintest echoes of creation, not because it must, but because it can? That's not just science, that's devotion. And here's the irony. While we search for intelligence in the cosmos might be searching for compassion in us, because intelligence alone doesn't guarantee survival. Empathy does. Wisdom does. A species that can harness nuclear fusion, but not its own temper, will not last long enough to send a message that matters. And so the real signal, the one worth decoding, may not be coming from billions of light years away. It may be coming from the collective hum of 8 billion human hearts asking, can we rise above ourselves before it's too late? The universe is vast, but it's not indifferent. It rewards curiosity, it preserves truth, it remembers light. Everything we do, every discovery, every act of kindness, every idea sends ripples through the cosmic web. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Neither can meaning, once shared. So when you look up at the night sky, remember this: you are not looking at strangers. You are looking at your own atoms, stretched across time and space, waiting for your attention. You are looking at the history of light learning how to think. And maybe, just maybe, the strange signal from the edge of the universe isn't asking, who's out there? It's whispering, are you ready to listen? Because the cosmos has already spoken, through starlight, through gravity, through you. And the only question that remains, the only one that truly matters, is whether humanity can quiet its own noise long enough to hear the universe call back. We haven't always listened well. For most of our history, the night sky was an audience, not a teacher. We spoke to it in prayers, carved its patterns into stone, named constellations after gods and animals and tragedies. When a comet blazed across the horizon, entire kingdoms trembled. When an eclipse darkened the sun, rulers hid in fear. We saw the heavens not as physics, but as fate. And then something changed. A handful of restless minds began to suspect that the cosmos might not be a stage for human stories, but a system that could be understood. They looked at the same stars everyone else saw and asked a different kind of question: why? Why do they move the way they do? Why do they return in predictable patterns? Why should the universe care enough about us to be consistent? Those questions gave birth to astronomy, and with it, humility. Galileo pointed his small telescope toward Jupiter and saw moons orbiting another world, proof that Earth was not the center of everything. Kepler found that planetary orbits were not perfect circles, but elegant ellipses, and realized that beauty in nature is not symmetry, but precision. Newton watched an apple fall and saw in its descent the same law that guides the moon. That's when humanity began to hear the first true signals from the universe, the language of mathematics. It wasn't the booming voice of gods, it was the quiet logic of gravity and light. And it said, you are part of this. From there, the instruments grew. Glass lenses became mirrors. Observatories became networks. Silence became data. We built radio telescopes to catch wavelengths invisible to the eye, learned to translate electromagnetic whispers into color and sound. Each new tool widened the conversation. We discovered that the universe wasn't a still picture, it was a dynamic symphony, with galaxies colliding, stars forming, black holes singing in gravity's deepest register. When James Clerk Maxwell unified electricity and magnetism, he didn't just describe physics, he expanded our sense of communication. He showed that light itself was a wave, a messenger. Every spark, every star, every atom emits a tiny broadcast into the void. And suddenly the cosmos looked less like a void and more like an orchestra of information. It took just a few more decades before humanity began to wonder, if we can send messages across oceans, could we send them across light years? Could something already be sending them to us? In 1899, Nikola Tesla claimed to detect a faint rhythmic pulse on his radio equipment and wondered if it was a call from Mars. It wasn't, but that dream, that audacity to imagine conversation across the stars, never faded. By the mid-20th century, we had turned deserts into ears' vast dishes pointed upward, waiting for the faintest anomaly. We were no longer satisfied with myths. We wanted contact. And here's where the story becomes human again. Because every time we built a better receiver, we also had to build a better sense of patience. The universe doesn't rush to answer. Light takes time, truth takes longer. When the wow signal flared for 72 seconds, scientists didn't declare victory. They checked cables, recalibrated instruments, searched for terrestrial interference. They understood that wonder is only half of science. Discipline is the other half, and when no repetition came, they didn't despair. They kept listening. That's the part of the story that rarely gets told, the quiet endurance of listening without guarantee. To keep searching the static, knowing that most of what you find will be noise, takes faith of a different kind. Faith in curiosity itself. It's the same faith that kept explorers sailing past known maps, that keeps particle physicists smashing atoms for one more decimal of precision. It's the conviction that truth, however faint, is always worth the signal-to-noise ratio. We sometimes talk about science as if it's separate from the human spirit, but it isn't. Every observatory on Earth is also a monument to hope. Each telescope is an act of optimism carved into steel, and glass a declaration that knowledge is possible, that meaning can be extracted from silence. And still, amid all our instruments and equations, the universe retains its mystery. 95% of it is dark matter and energy we can infer, but not see. The cosmos is not withholding information, it's reminding us that our story is still in draft form. We've mapped the continents, we've named the moons, but we've only begun to sketch the boundaries of understanding itself. Sometimes I think the real edge of the universe isn't out there at all. It's the edge of comprehension, the point where our equations falter and our metaphors reach for meaning. That's the true frontier, the space between what we know and what we can imagine. And maybe that's where this strange signal comes from, not the distant galaxies, but that boundary inside us, where wonder meets humility. Because when you strip away the technology and the data and the jargon, what we're really doing, when we aim those dishes at the stars is something beautifully simple. We're asking, with instruments instead of prayers, the oldest question any mind has ever asked: is anyone out there? It's a question carved into our DNA. It's why children stare at the night sky. It's why poets write, why scientists measure, why we send probes beyond the reach of sunlight with a record that says, to any who find this, these are our sounds, our languages, our hopes. Even if no one ever hears it, the act of sending defines us. Because to send a signal into the void is to admit that the void might not be empty. And that admission, that leap of faith, grounded in evidence, is the beginning of wisdom. So the strange signal coming from the edge of the universe? Maybe it's the cosmos repeating our own question back to us, echoing through time. Are you listening as carefully as you're speaking? And the longer we listen, the more profound the silence becomes. The universe, so vast and radiant, offers no clear reply. No shimmering handshake across the stars, no interstellar greetings card, just a quiet hum of radiation and the steady rhythm of our own heartbeat against it. To some, that silence feels like rejection. To others, it feels like mystery. To me, it feels like a question that keeps deepening every time we ask it. Because silence, if you really think about it, is not absence, it's bandwidth. It's possibility. When the cosmos gives us quiet, it's not saying no, it's leaving room for us to answer. We call this puzzle the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi, a physicist whose mind could slice reality with the elegance of an equation, once looked up from his lunch and asked, where is everybody? Given the number of stars, the probability of planets, the inevitability of life, we should be surrounded by neighbors' entire galactic civilizations, traffic jams of signals, yet here we are, alone, or at least apparently so. There are explanations, of course. Maybe we're early. Maybe intelligent life is rare. Maybe civilizations burn bright and fast, like cosmic matches, consuming themselves before they can cross the void. Maybe the distances are simply too great even at the speed of light. The cosmos is patient to a degree that human lifetimes can't comprehend. Or maybe they're out there listening just as we are, and the universe is filled not with noise, but with mutual hesitation. Sometimes I wonder if the great silence isn't the absence of company, but the abundance of caution. Every civilization perhaps reaching a point where it must choose between survival and expansion, between understanding itself and broadcasting to others. And maybe most civilizations fail that test. Maybe the universe is quiet because those that spoke too soon were drowned out by their own echoes. When I think about that, I don't feel despair, I feel responsibility. Because every time we transmit a signal into the cosmos, we're doing more than sending data. We're sending a portrait of who we are. And if anyone out there is listening, they'll learn more about us from what we choose to send than from the message itself. So what are we broadcasting right now? A constant, chaotic wave of television, radio, GPS, radar, cellular noise, a technological roar. It's as if the Earth itself has become a lighthouse of confusion. And yet within that noise, there are patterns: music, laughter, mathematics, love stories, arguments, lullabies, a portrait of a species still learning how to speak to itself before it speaks to the stars. Maybe the universe has been waiting for us to learn that lesson that communication without understanding is just noise amplified, that intelligence without wisdom is still a kind of silence. Every civilization that ever reached our level of technological adolescence must have faced the same tension. The ability to shape worlds without yet understanding themselves. They must have discovered what we are discovering now, that knowledge expands faster than empathy, that discovery outpaces maturity. And perhaps that's why we haven't heard from them. Not because they failed, but because they learned restraint. Because they realized that before you send your voice into the void, you must be sure it speaks for something worth hearing. This, to me, is the real heart of the signal, not the mystery of its origin, but the mirror it holds up to us. Every time we wonder if someone is out there, the question folds inward: what kind of someone are we here? Would another civilization tuning in hear harmony or dissonance in our broadcast? Would they recognize intelligence or chaos? Would they hear a species ready to join a cosmic conversation, or one still arguing with itself across invisible borders? It's easy to talk about extraterrestrial life as an abstraction, but the truth is, the first test of our readiness isn't contact, it's cooperation. If we can't live together on one planet, under one sky, how can we ever hope to stand together beneath billions? If we can't hear each other through our own noise, why should we expect to hear a signal from another star? The strange signal from the edge of the universe, then, might not be coming to us, it might be coming through us. It's a call to awareness. To realize that the same physics that governs galaxies governs human hearts. Energy must be balanced. Matter must be conserved. Forces must coexist. Every law that keeps a planet in orbit is a metaphor for how civilizations survive through equilibrium. We've learned to measure cosmic microwave background radiation to 6 decimal places, but how precisely do we measure compassion? We've charted the expansion of the universe, but can we measure the expansion of understanding? Between cultures, between people, between minds? That, I think, is the next frontier. The journey from the external universe to the internal one, from observation to participation, from curiosity to responsibility. The universe doesn't owe us meaning, but it has given us the tools to make it the ability to wonder, to imagine, to create. And that in itself is a kind of cosmic favor. We are the universe's newest experiment in consciousness. And what we do next, how we treat our planet, each other, and the silence between stars will decide whether that experiment continues. So when you hear the phrase, the strange signal from the edge of the universe, don't think of aliens or conspiracies. Think of the faint hum of existence calling you to attention. Think of it as the cosmos asking, are you ready to be more than a listener? Are you ready to become a participant? Because the next great discovery won't be found in a telescope or a collider. It will be found in the human decision to align intelligence with empathy, to make our signal, our civilization, one worth receiving. And perhaps no moment in history captured that bridge between curiosity and responsibility more vividly than the space race. It began, as most great endeavors do, with fear disguised as ambition. 2 superpowers, locked in ideological tension, turned their rivalry skyward. Sputnik, a metal sphere no bigger than a beach ball, became the first artificial moon. It beeped a simple radio signal as it passed overhead, a steady pulse, a cosmic heartbeat. But that humble beep, beep, beep changed everything. For the first time, Earth had heard itself from above. That was our first real signal from the edge of what was possible. And it didn't come from aliens, it came from us. It said, we can leave the cradle. Just 12 years later, Apollo 11 touched down on the moon, and humanity looked back to see what no generation before had ever witnessed. Earth, small and luminous, floating in darkness. That photograph, the pale blue marble suspended in the cosmic sea, did more to change our perspective than any flag planted or speech given. Because when you see the entire planet from space, borders vanish. There are no nations from that distance, no tribes, no us versus them. Just one shimmering oasis of life in an ocean of night. And in that moment, the space race stopped being about competition and became something much greater. Reflection. We went to the moon to prove we could. We stayed to understand why we should. That shift in perspective, the overview effect, astronauts call it, remains one of the most transformative experiences a human can have. Those who've seen Earth from orbit often return changed. They speak of unity, of fragility, of an overwhelming urge to protect the planet that birthed them. They describe a realization so simple it sounds profound. We are all passengers on the same ship, hurtling through space with no lifeboats, no spare parts, and no replacement crew. But somewhere along the way, as our technology advanced, our wonder began to flicker. The cosmos that once filled us with awe became routine background noise to daily survival. We built satellites to guide our cars but forgot how to navigate by the stars. We look down at our screens more often than up at our sky. And yet, every time we forget, the universe has a way of reminding us who we are. Because the strange signal that whisper from the edge of everything keeps calling not just through telescopes, but through our own history. Every time we rediscover our capacity for cooperation, creativity, or compassion, that's a signal too. Every great act of unity is the cosmos communicating through us. Think of Voyager 1 and 2, those twin emissaries still sailing beyond the solar system, carrying golden records engraved with our sounds, our music, our story. Beethoven and Bach. Whale songs. Greetings in 55 languages. Even a mother's kiss recorded as a heartbeat. If one day a distant intelligence plays that record, they won't just hear data, they'll hear emotion rendered into physics. They'll hear that somewhere, billions of years ago, a species learned to turn its questions into art. And maybe that's what the universe has been waiting for. A species not defined by power, but by perspective. Not by conquest, but by curiosity. Because the cosmos doesn't need another empire. It needs witnesses. It needs participants humble enough to marvel and wise enough to preserve. When we first walked on the moon, Neil Armstrong said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." But the greater leap is the one that comes after the leap inward. The realization that exploration isn't just about distance, it's about depth. It's about seeing that the farthest galaxies and the human heart are both expressions of the same creative impulse, the universe striving to know itself. And if that's true, if consciousness is the cosmos awakening to its own existence, then every act of awareness, every question asked, every compassionate choice is a continuation of cosmic evolution. You are not a spectator in this story. You are its latest chapter. The signal you've been waiting for is not out there in the radio noise. It's in the decision you make every day to live awake. That's what the space race ultimately revealed. That our greatest discovery is not that we can escape Earth, but that we can understand it. That we can see it clearly enough to protect it. That we can act as stewards, not owners, of this fragile blue world. So the next time you look at the night sky, remember, every photon that reaches your eye has traveled across time to greet you. Each one carries a message billions of years old. The universe has been signaling to us since before we had ears to hear or minds to comprehend. And now that we do, what will we say back? Maybe the most important thing we can send into the cosmos isn't proof of our intelligence, but evidence of our decency. Maybe the truest mark of an advanced civilization is not how far it travels, but how deeply it cares. Because if the universe ever answers our call, if we one day receive a reply from that strange signal at the edge of everything, the first question any intelligence will ask is the same one we should be asking ourselves: did you take care of your home? And if we can answer yes, if we can say that we learned to balance progress with compassion, power with humility, then it won't matter whether that signal came from another galaxy or from the echo of our own conscience, because we'll know we've earned our place in the conversation. And here's where all those stories of discovery bend back toward us. We keep talking about signals as though they come from somewhere else, some distant transmitter, some other intelligence. But the truth is, every age of science has sent one first and only later realized what it really meant. The first spark struck between two flints was a signal. So was the first wheel carving a rut into dust, the first equation scratched onto a slate, the first radio pulse bouncing off the ionosphere. Each was the universe saying, "You're beginning to understand me." But understanding is only half the contract. Every time we figure out a new way to see farther, we also have to decide what to do with that vision. The telescope didn't just widen the sky, it widened our moral horizon. When we saw how small we were supposed to become gentler. When we saw how rare life was, we were supposed to become guardians. When we heard how quiet the cosmos is, we were supposed to learn how to listen, really listen to each other. Instead, we often fall back into the same old habits, turning discovery into competition, knowledge into currency, progress into noise. But that's not inevitable. Each generation gets another chance to tune the frequency a little closer to harmony. We can choose to use our intelligence as an amplifier for empathy, not ego. We can decide that the next great signal we send won't be a burst of static, but a story about cooperation. The beauty of physics is that it leaves room for that choice. It doesn't demand virtue, but it gives us the space to exercise it. In a universe that runs on entropy, every act of understanding is rebellion against decay. Every scientist, artist, teacher, parent, anyone who keeps the light of curiosity burning is performing the same cosmic function as a star, converting chaos into clarity, darkness into radiance. Think about that for a second. When you explain an idea to a child, when you comfort someone in grief, when you build instead of destroy, you are releasing a kind of light that travels just as surely as a photon does. It moves through time, through memory, through generations. That's what legacy really is. Energy that keeps going. If you ever doubt that individual actions matter, remember that every atom in your body is proof that they do. Each one has survived billions of years of cosmic turbulence to be here now, arranged in the exact pattern that makes you possible. That's not an accident, that's endurance. That's the universe refusing to give up on complexity. So when we talk about the future, about climate, about conflict, about the 1,000 ways we could fail or succeed, think of it this way. The cosmos isn't watching us with judgment. It's waiting to see if we'll continue the pattern. If we'll be a link in the long chain of light or just another flash that fades too soon. We're standing right now at the edge of two frontiers, one outward, one inward. Outward lies the literal universe galaxies we've yet to map, worlds we've yet to imagine. Inward lies the moral universe empathy we've yet to practice, understanding we've yet to earn. Conquer either one without the other, and we fail both. That's why the next space race shouldn't be about flags or footprints. It should be about perspective. We need explorers, yes, but we also need caretakers. We need to learn that reaching for the stars and protecting the soil beneath our feet are not opposing acts, but parallel ones. Because a civilization that can cross the void, but can't keep its own planet alive, isn't advanced, it's just well-equipped. The strange signal from the edge of the universe may never decode into words, but it's already speaking through implication. You are rare, you are fragile, you are capable, you are temporary. So what will you do with your brief interval of light? That's the question that ties the cosmic to the human. And it's not a question for astronomers alone. It's for everyone who has ever looked up and wondered. Every engineer designing cleaner engines, every artist reminding us what beauty feels like, every teacher igniting a student's curiosity. That's how a species answers the universe, not with noise, but with meaning. We are the signal now. Our ideas, our compassion, our collective will they are the pulse the universe will measure us by. If some distant intelligence ever does detect us, what will they hear? A cacophony of fear and division? Or a melody of persistence and care? The universe doesn't send final exams. It sends opportunities. This moment, our moment, is one of them. We can choose to let our brilliance consume us, or we can learn to let it illuminate. We can choose to broadcast arrogance, or we can transmit understanding. Because here's the quiet truth. Every time we act with integrity, with curiosity, with courage, we are strengthening the signal. We are turning the random noise of existence into coherence. We are helping the universe know itself just a little better. And when the day comes, whether tomorrow or in 10,000 years, when another mind finally catches a whisper from this small blue world, may they hear not just data, but harmony. May they know that for a while, the cosmos produced a species that built telescopes and spacecraft, yes, but also poetry, laughter, kindness, and the stubborn will to keep listening. That's the answer we've been writing all along. That's the message encoded in every sunrise, every heartbeat, every act of discovery, that light, once born, never truly dies. It travels, it transforms, it tells a story. And in that story, the story of us, the strange signal coming from the edge of the universe, will finally make sense. It was never a mystery to solve. It was an invitation to become worthy of being found. And maybe when we finally understand that, the universe will feel a little less silent, because the truth is, it was never the cosmos that stopped speaking. It was us who stopped listening. We filled the frequencies with our own static, the noise of greed, fear, distraction. But underneath that noise, the signal is still there, steady, patient, waiting for consciousness to tune back in. Every so often, humanity does just that. When a telescope catches the faint light of a galaxy billions of years away, when a scientist dedicates their life to understanding one equation, when a child looks up for the first time and whispers, "Wow!" Those are moments when the frequency clears. Those are moments when the universe and the human spirit are in perfect resonance. That's what discovery truly is, not just a technical achievement, but an act of alignment. It's when curiosity, humility, and courage come into phase with nature. It's when we stop demanding answers and start participating in the mystery. We sometimes think of the cosmos as out there, as something vast and unreachable, but that's a linguistic illusion. The atoms that make up your eyes, the very particles through which you see the universe, were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. When you gaze into the night sky, the universe is, in a literal sense, looking back through you. You are the signal the cosmos sent to itself. And that realization should humble us, because if the universe is self-aware through us, then every decision we make becomes part of its autobiography. Every act of cruelty writes darkness into the record of creation. Every act of kindness writes light. That's what makes our time so critical. We're a species powerful enough to alter the climate of an entire planet, to send machines beyond the heliopause, to manipulate the genome that evolution spent billions of years crafting. We have become, in a way, the engineers of the next chapter of the cosmos. The question is, what kind of authors will we be? When future civilizations, human or otherwise, uncover the archaeological traces of our existence, they won't just study our technology. They'll study our choices. They'll see whether we treated knowledge as a weapon or a bridge, whether we used our power to dominate or to understand, whether we acted like the only voice in the universe or one in harmony among many. So the strange signal from the edge of the universe isn't a mystery to decode, it's a test to interpret. It's asking whether we, the species that can split atoms and sequence genomes, can also master restraint. Whether we can remember that exploration without empathy is just expansion without direction. Because if we ever do make contact, if one day we hear another civilization call back, it won't be technology that allows us to meet them as equals. It will be humility. It will be the willingness to admit that intelligence is not supremacy, that awareness carries responsibility, and that the greatest proof of life is not survival, but stewardship. That's the lesson written in every supernova and every sunrise. Creation gives, destruction takes, and meaning is what survives between the two. The next great frontier, then, isn't Mars or Alpha Centauri. It's learning how to coexist, how to sustain consciousness without consuming the conditions that make it possible. It's learning how to treat our own planet as the precious anomaly, that it is a self-sustaining miracle wrapped in sunlight and water and fragile chemistry. If we fail that, no distant civilization will ever need to destroy us. Entropy will do it for them. The universe rewards those who align with its rhythms, who respect balance. But if we succeed, if we learn to live as extensions of that balance, then the signal we send into the cosmos won't just be data. It will be harmony. It will be the sound of a species that learned, at last, to hear its own echo and respond with wisdom. And maybe, billions of years from now, when the last remnants of our solar system fade into cold light, that harmony will still be traveling, still expanding, still carrying the story of a small planet where the universe once woke up, looked around, and decided that knowledge was beautiful enough to share. So the next time you look at the night sky, whether from a city balcony or a mountain peak, remember, the light you see is ancient, but the act of seeing is new. You are the latest awareness to join this endless chain of curiosity. The signal didn't just come from the edge of the universe. It came from the edge of possibility. And the universe is still listening, waiting to hear whether we can turn our moment of consciousness into something worthy of the light that made us. That's the final message of the strange signal. Not we are not alone, but we were never separate. We are the cosmos made capable of awe. And as long as we remember that, the signal will never fade. And maybe that's the most profound revelation of all, that the universe has never really been about distance, but relationship. It's not the light years that separate us that matter. It's the awareness that binds us. Every photon that travels across space carries not only information, but intimacy, a silent correspondence between creation and comprehension. We often imagine ourselves as small, fragile beings adrift in an uncaring void. But look closer. The void isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibility. Every cubic centimeter of space hums with energy, virtual particles blinking in and out of existence, a reminder that even nothingness is restless. It's as though the universe itself refuses to stay silent. And maybe that's why we're here, to translate that restlessness into meaning, to take the hum of quantum fields and turn it into music, mathematics, art, empathy, to be the syntax through which the cosmos learns to speak to itself. When you think about it that way, the so-called strange signal doesn't need coordinates. It could be arriving right now in the question you just formed, in the empathy you feel for a stranger, in the inspiration that pulls you toward creation rather than destruction. Those are signals, two pulses of coherence in a universe otherwise governed by entropy. Entropy will win eventually. Stars will fade, galaxies will drift apart, and even light will stretch into invisibility. But the end of time isn't tragedy. It's testimony. It means the universe kept moving. It means that for a long, improbable moment, there was warmth and color and life, and that life knew it was alive. If the cosmos has a legacy, it's not written in the orbits of planets or the spectra of stars. It's written in awareness, in the capacity to look up and feel both awe and responsibility at once. Every civilization that ever existed has had to learn that equation. Wonder without stewardship leads to ruin. Stewardship without wonder leads to stagnation. Only when both meet do we achieve what we call progress. So maybe the signal we keep searching for out there is simply the echo of that balance. A reminder transmitted across the eons saying, don't forget what made you curious in the first place, because curiosity is sacred. It's the spark that built everything from campfires to quantum theory. It's the emotion that binds science and soul, logic and longing. And if we ever lose it, if we ever stop asking why, then it won't matter how advanced we become, we'll have gone deaf to the universe's song. The cosmos isn't demanding worship. It's inviting participation. Every discovery is a verse, every question a refrain. We're not spectators at a cosmic concert. We're instruments in it. And the music only continues if we keep playing. So let's keep building telescopes not as monuments to power, but as windows to humility. Let's keep teaching science not as dogma, but as an invitation to fall in love with reality. Let's keep exploring, not because the universe needs us to, but because exploration is how the universe stays alive within us. And when you find yourself overwhelmed by the noise of the modern world, the endless data, the algorithms, the distractions, step outside some night, look up, and remember that you are quite literally the cosmos taking a breath. You are part of the same physics that ignites suns and bends spacetime. You are proof that matter can know compassion. That, to me, is the real strange signal from the edge of the universe. Not a transmission in radio waves, but a realization that arrives in silence, that we belong to something vast, ancient, and astonishing, and it has been waiting all along for us to answer. So answer with curiosity, with kindness, with courage. Let every action, every thought, every experiment, every work of art be your reply. Because the universe is listening, and the frequency of that listening is measured not in hertz, but in humanity. And someday, far beyond our own time, when the last of our cities have crumbled back into the soil, when the oceans have shifted their shores and the continents have danced into new shapes, perhaps something or someone will find the faint residue of our existence. Maybe it will be a probe we sent, drifting between galaxies, still carrying its golden memory of Earth. Maybe it will be a faint radio echo, stretched thin by time, but still legible to an intelligence curious enough to listen. Or maybe it will be something less tangible, the trace of our questions imprinted on the fabric of space itself. Whatever form it takes, that will be our monument, not pyramids, not skyscrapers, not algorithms, but curiosity. Because curiosity is the one inheritance that survives entropy. It's the flame that leaps from mind to mind, from species to species, from era to era, refusing to go out. That is what the strange signal really represents. It's not proof of life beyond Earth, it's proof of life within us. Proof that in a universe governed by indifference, something arose that cared enough to look up and wonder. Something that refused to accept ignorance as destiny. Something that decided that to understand is in itself a form of love. And if the universe could feel, if it could be aware of what it has created, I think it would be proud. Proud not of our power, not of our machines, but of our wonder. Because wonder is what turns existence into experience, matter into meaning. It's what transforms a collection of atoms into a consciousness capable of awe. We tend to think of intelligence as the ability to solve problems, to build, to invent. But maybe real intelligence is the ability to appreciate, to recognize beauty in the laws of physics, to see art in equations, to feel humility in the face of the infinite. It's the kind of intelligence that doesn't just seek to conquer the universe, but to understand it. That's the intelligence we need now. One that builds telescopes not to prove our dominance, but to remind us how much we still don't know. One that builds cities not to compete, but to collaborate. One that studies the stars not to escape our planet, but to learn how to cherish it. Because in the end, all the light we send into space, all the signals we beam into the dark, all the questions we ask, they're really acts of hope. Every time we point a dish at the sky or a camera at a nebula, we're declaring that the future still matters, that there is still something left worth discovering, worth protecting, worth becoming. And that hope, that restless, radiant hope, is the brightest thing we've ever made. So if you ever find yourself overwhelmed by how small we are, remember, smallness doesn't mean insignificance. It means participation. You are part of something immeasurable, and your awareness is its continuation. The strange signal from the edge of the universe was never a mystery to solve. It was a reminder to listen, to look, to learn. It's still echoing through you, through me, through every generation that will dare to wonder. And as long as we keep asking questions, as long as we keep turning our eyes to the stars and our hearts toward understanding, that signal will never fade, because it isn't coming from the edge of the universe. It is the universe calling itself by name. Through every curious mind that ever looked up and whispered, "I hear you," and maybe, in that whisper, the story comes full circle. We began as stardust adrift, unaware of its own potential. Then, somewhere in the long cooling of the cosmos, those atoms arranged themselves into eyes that could look back, into minds that could ask why. And now, here we are, the universe aware of itself for the briefest of instants, standing on a small blue world, daring to listen for a reply. The strange signal at the edge of the universe, it may never arrive as a pulse of radio or a flash of light, but it doesn't have to, because the truth is the universe has already answered. It answered with galaxies and gravity, with life and laughter, with the improbable fact that you exist at all. The signal was never something out there waiting to be found. It was the moment you looked up and realized you were part of something infinite. It was the spark in your chest when you felt awe instead of fear. It was the silence between heartbeats when you sense that everything, every atom, every orbit, every life is connected by the same physics and the same wonder. We are, each of us, a continuation of that signal carrying forward the message written in hydrogen and hope, that awareness is rare, that compassion is strength, that curiosity is the only immortality we're ever guaranteed. So keep asking questions. Keep sending your light into the dark, even when you don't know who might be listening, because that's what the universe has been doing since the beginning. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to be alive. When the day comes that our descendants or whoever inherits the cosmos look back on this brief moment of ours, may they find more than static. May they find a species that learned to turn its noise into music. May they find a world that understood that to protect life is to protect meaning itself. And when the last echoes of our civilization finally fade into the background hum of the universe, may the cosmos still carry the faint imprint of our message that for a little while, in one corner of space and time, matter opened its eyes, looked out at the dark, and smiled.